Oh yes, a very good evening once again, and welcome to the program Beyond the Headlines. We did promise that we'll be bringing you another edition of this program this Sunday, and here we are. Today we want to ask the question, the Kenyan youth the most marginalized and misused by politicians in this country? And this morning we have the pleasure to have a great panel, by the way. That is Frank Mukwanja, is from the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. Frank, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
And also joining us this evening is none other than Waithara Gaido. Waithara is she's the Executive Director of the Alternatives Africa. Welcome to the program, Waithara.
Thank you.
And of course, the space you see here will be joined by Javas Bigambo, who is from the Youth Agenda, as we talk about matters youth. If you want to engage us, the drill is always simple, as Jen Wamboy will let you know in a while. Jen, I want to believe you've been good since last Sunday.
As always,
yes.
Looking forward to Beyond the Headlines. We'll be good just Beyond the Headlines to deliver what Kenyans ought to know. A warm welcome once again to Beyond the Headlines. I'm Jane Wamboy. Now, as already mentioned, in today's discussion, we will be talking about the youth and some of the challenges facing the youth. Citing from the recent example of the IEBC demos, it is the youth who have been forming the largest percentage in the demos. Now, seeing such brings a lot of questions to mind, and the key one among them, and also what we're asking you today, are the youth the most marginalized and misused group by the politicians? Are the youth the most marginalized and misused group by the politicians? We invite you to be part of this conversation, so feel free to talk to us. Our SMS line is officially open. 20511 is the number. You can also find us on Twitter using @KBC Channel 1, hashtag Beyond the Headlines, and on Facebook, our page is Beyond the Headlines. Do remember to leave your name and location. We will be sampling your views and comments as we go on with the show. But for now, let's get this conversation started. Back to you, Martin.
Thank you, Jen, and I want to believe, looking forward to those reactions. And Mukwanja, let's begin straight away with that question. Are the Kenyan youth the most marginalized and misused by politicians in this country?
I think the answer is both yes and no. Yes, because of what we have seen over time, mostly after the multi-party initiative of 1992. We have seen young people only engaged in the wrong things politically. That means being mobilized in their numbers to attend political rallies, and not just to listen to the policies that the politicians are churning out in those political rallies, but obviously to heckle the opponents and make life difficult for the opponents. To that extent, you may say they have been misused, and therefore they have not engaged meaningfully. But looking at the reality, what it is, young people have actually also engaged meaningfully. Looking at the average age of the parliament at 2013 in March when they are sworn in, the average age was about 42. That tells you that a lot of young people are getting elected. And they are not just getting elected for being young, because youth is not a qualification, but because they have articulated a particular issue that has resonated well with the electorate, and therefore they have been given the position of leadership. Now, the question that needs to be answered is, have the young people once entrusted by the electorate, have they been up to task, or have they disappointed?
And I will almost say that the contention begins from with our youth in this country, because you did cite 42 years and said young people seems to be doing good in this country.
I mean, by the time, I know the Constitution, I know the National Youth Policy defines the youth as an 18-year-old to a 35-year-old.
Yes.
But I'm speaking from a point of view of by the time a young person gets elected, by the time you get elected at 42, you have been politically active from your early 20s. That tells you that these people have begun, because you don't begin politics today and get elected tomorrow. You begin by demonstrating your capacity, and by the time people entrust you. So by going by the Kenyan standards, 42 is quite a youthful age, not in terms of being young, but in terms of being youthful. 42 is actually a very good age to look at.
Very interesting. Waithara, when we talk about the question of youth, and he cites the question of youth being misused, talk about mobilization, heckling, what makes youth be susceptible to this kind of tactics that are normally used by politicians in this country?
The youth in this nation are let's say those who are eligible for voting are 5.9 million, aged between 18 and 35. Now, according to the Youth Fact Book, 43% of those fall between the age of 18 and 25. 26 to 30 years are 29% who vote, and those who are between 31 and 35 that vote are those who are 28%, meaning the larger cohort is those who are between 18 and 25 that are eligible for voting. However, when you look at the statistics of those who vote, of that first cohort, only 10% vote. I'm going somewhere with this. The next cohort, only 8% vote, and those, rather 9%, and those between 31 and 35, only 8% vote. Then you ask yourself, are youth really interested in politics? According to the Afrobarometer Kenya, 45% of youth say they are not interested in politics. Only 26% say they are interested. The rest are here, no there. So the question is, are the youth interested in politics? Looking at it from a socio-economic development, or rather socio-economic perspective, I think it's a transaction, because do you think youth go and heckle without being paid? If I am being offered some money, I am jobless. I'm being told, go, this is what is expected of you, and for this, this is the match that you will get.
But then is it not an indictment of the Alternatives Africa and at the same time CMD here? Because these organizations exist purely to empower the youth to do civic education, so that these people are kind of interested in engaging some of these things. But then how do you talk about your youth agenda? You have Alternatives Africa, you have CMD, all doing the same thing. You want to empower the youth, but they are still becoming susceptible to some of the tricks that the politicians seem to be using.
This is what I'll say, and I say it again and again, that the youth of this nation, not just the youth, this nation generally has been fed on a diet of purely politics. So what are you getting? Of course, you will get development, marasma, and kwashiako, and every other disease that comes with just being fed with one nutrition, isn't it? So our mindsets are not set to think of development. For example, when you go for a job, what are you asked for? A CV. A CV does not ask you what you are promising to do for the company in future. A CV is about what experience do you have in the past and what have you done in the future. So why do we elect, or why are we willing that our politics are telling us I promise and I ensure, or I will ensure rather, instead of what have you done for us in the past, or what have you done in this nation? What have you done in this community? What have you done at county level? What have you even done for your village, so that we can say, therefore, go and represent us at country level? So I do not think that it's fair to say that the youth are being misused and all that. Yes, they are, but the question is why? Why should I sleep hungry if I am being told I will be given 200 shillings to go and to the streets and all that? I am a very, how will I say it, a susceptible club in the hands of someone who has got the money. I'm just doing a job.
The question will be, why will these few politicians overpower a collective resolve by such organizations as yours to try and empower the youth? Why not ensure that the political diet is submerged, and at the end of the day, what you are propagating overpowers what the politicians are doing?
When you lack structures, and in structures I'm speaking from a multi-party experience. From structures, I mean the lack of political institutions. You must ask yourself, Martin, why is it that the likes of Matiba, the likes of Mwai Kibaki, the likes of Tom Mboya, and were very successful when they were young in terms of doing their politics? Because there were political institutions. Today, we have political parties that are charismatic. When you remove a certain face from ODM and remove a certain face from TNA, remove a certain face from URP and take them elsewhere, they cease to exist. And wherever they have gone, they exist. So the lack of political institutions that lead me to the second issue of policy. What do these political parties believe in? Because the political parties in this country are formed around charisma, which means they are personality driven.
But that's
Number two, they are formed around issues that are just about catch it all. If the issue today is terrorism, every political party and every politician wants to hype on that. There are no consistent policy issues that can be able to offer ground for young people to participate in these political parties and therefore be mentored, be educated, be trained to ready themselves for leadership and engage meaningfully in decision making. As long as we have no political institutions, and as long as our political institutions have no policy issues, but they mobilize along ethnic lines, young people are always going to be motivated by the way Waithera said, if they are unemployed, give them something, they have something to do at a political rally.
But so then the question I'm asking is, with all this kind of maladjustments that you seem to be citing, though it's also contestable whether we don't have political institutions, why there are, do you first believe we don't have political institutions? And number two, there are those who argue that while we want to point fingers at political parties in this country, one of the reasons why we are not empowering the youth in this country is that non-governmental organizations or institutions that ought to be championing the rights of the youth seems to be borrowing or engaging in what you can call a business model kind of doing things. And therefore, while you indict politicians, that organizations such as yours also stand, or non-governmental organizations stand also accused of not championing their rights.
For me, allow me please to look at it from that balanced angle. Yeah, one of the challenges that we have, and in business experts will tell you, it only takes 3 to 15% to change whether it's a community, a culture, a nation, etc. So you do not need 5.9 million youth to vote in order to change a nation. In fact, you do not even need 5%. Just 3 people standing for the right thing can actually transform a nation. I beg to differ that there are no systems and structures. There are systems and structures in this country. And I know they are there because when you go to the government to get anything, there is such a long, more often than not, there are so many bottlenecks. Bottlenecks actually show that there are systems and processes, albeit not working efficiently, but they are there. Now, for example, we are heading towards 2017 elections. We had 2013 elections. There was silence. Suddenly, it's 2016, and the season is here. And everyone has gone up. Politics, it's like people were just waiting. That is not how it's meant to be. When there are systems and structures, it means that there are meant to be working platforms, efficient platforms for politics, for social, and for economic purposes. Now, are the youth engaged? Why are they not engaged? And I will not blame the politician. Even the youth also has a role to play. Even the media has a role to play. Everybody has a role to play.
And the question will be, what is stopping everybody from playing that role?
In 2 words, I would say mindset. It's purely a mindset thing. If I asked you, for example, what is your vision for Kenya? There's a time people were told to sing the national anthem. Most Kenyans can't remember their national anthem since high school. Isn't it true?
It's
now,
true.
What every day we wake up, we all have a dream, we all have a hope for our personal lives. But do we have one for our nation? When you look at, for example, the United States, their flag is everywhere. They are so proud to be Americans. We are proud to be Kenyans when our athletes win, when our sports people win. When we are hit by terrorists, we are one. But we are heading towards 2017. Suddenly, we are Luo, we are Kamba, I thought we were one. We gave blood for each other a few years ago when Westgate was hit. What have we forgotten?
And so the question is, Mkwanja has intervened. The question is, what is stopping you from changing the mindsets of the young people in this country? Because Waithara seems to allude to that.
I think the whole point was not about the lack of structures and or systems. The issue is about the hollowness of these structures. I will, for instance, cite, you have a system for registration of political parties. And these political parties have real good structures. But what are the policy and policy orientations and programs of these political parties so that they can be able to ready young people? The issues that Waithara is complaining about, issues of patriotism, issues of being a visionary at a very, tender age, issues about understanding nationhood and being there and offering solutions, they can only be offered pragmatically through a structured political party that has proper programs to mentor young people, to educate young people around particular issues, so that every young person can be able to argue informed by particular issues, not informed by their mother tongue and where they're coming from and who has asked them to say what they are saying. So that is what I wanted to clarify. What is stopping us? The burden, the responsibility of service delivery to the people is squarely to the elected government by the people. The other players only contribute to the level that I'll explain, for instance, in the case of the Center for Multi-Party Democracy.
That's where I want us to pick it up. Jen, I want to believe there's so many reactions, be it on Twitter, 20511. What are Kenyans saying regarding this particular topic?
We do indeed have feedback. Remember, we're talking about the youth, and we're talking about the youth and some of the challenges and issues facing the youth, and we asked you whether the youth are the most marginalized and misused group by politicians. Let's just go straight to it. We have Edward on SMS who say it's not possible to include the youth in politics because currently our leaders still call themselves vijana. So how can there be room for the real youth? The question of a proper definition of youth and the age group, the age span that is in the youth category. We also have Nyambura on SMS. There is no way the current leaders would want their youth to be involved in politics. They view the youth only as a tool to be used for personal gain. All right, one more on SMS. We have Wanja who says, the only way the youth can be constructively involved is if we support them to vie for seats. Wanja calling for the youth to come out in themselves so that they can get support to be pushed to vie for the seats. Keep talking to us. Our SMS line is still open. 20511 is the number. On Twitter, you can find us using @KBC Channel 1 hashtag Beyond the Headlines, and on Facebook, the page is Beyond the Headlines. Martin, back to you.
Thank you. And I like what Wanja raises there with the youth in this country. I remember I began by that question, Waithara, and I'm 35, in fact, I'm 50 years old. I want to be president of this country, and I'm saying I'm representing the interest of the youth. Do we get some degree of what you can call a lacuna, kind of in terms of defining a youth in this country?
Okay, according to the Constitution, a youth is someone who's between the age of 18 and one who has not attained the age of 35. However, there are those who feel young at heart. And we cannot blame them for feeling that they are young at heart, or for those who feel that they can speak on behalf of the youth. But that does not legally qualify them, according to the Constitution of Kenya, to be youth. So one of the challenges that we are having with the youth is the mentality that we were given since we were very young, that leadership is for older people, that you're still too young to lead. And that is why you see that even when you look at some of the opportunities that are being given to the youth, as I had someone describe, they're just about grass cutting and trench cleaning, because that energy needs to be spent doing something. But what about the mind? Even when you look at most of the forums and the conferences that go on, you will find, I attended a youth conference earlier this year, and there was not even one youth representing youth, and it was on youth unemployment. And yet we've got an example of Honorable Sakaja, who had just, the employment bill had just been passed. Even he was not invited for that. Why? Because they feel like youth, the older people feel like youth are their burden. Yet, when you look at the greatest innovators in this country, even of M-Pesa, when you look at the JUST conference that just happened last year, you did not see any old people displaying their innovators. Hardly did you see any. Who did you see? You saw youth. And that is why I agree that what we need is mentorship for young people. If you want to have a youth event, it should be youth-led. But one of the challenges we are having, and the youth seem to have accepted it, is that the older know better. Yes, they do, for their generation. But for our generation, we do know better. We are faster with technology. We are faster, we are more flexible when it comes to taking risks. Young people are very good at that. We are very quick at changing our minds. We don't mind changing our minds if we are convinced in that direction. However, that is not being displayed. That is not being shown.
We're going to delve into the issues you want to raise. I know where you want to head to. And of course, Javas Bigambo is now here with us. That is the guest I did introduce earlier. We want to take a break, and when you come back, Javas Bigambo from the Youth Agenda will also be here with us. Stay tuned to the program. This is definitely Beyond the Headlines. If you're just joining us, this is the program Beyond the Headlines, and we are glad that you did find time to join us. I now introduce you still to my panel this evening, and of course, Frank Mkwanja from Center for Multi-Party Democracy, that is CMD. We also have Waidara Gaido, who is the Executive Director, Alternative Africa, that is. And the man we've been waiting for is finally here. That is Javas Bigambo from Youth Agenda. Welcome, sir, to the program.
Thank you so much.
And you just got when we heated in the debate. And the question we want to really focus on, the 2017 general elections are just around the corner, about 13 months away. And we can see, judging from the anti-IBC protests, what we are likely to be seeing come 2017. And Javas, I begin with you. What do we need to do to ensure that the youth in this country are preoccupied with things that are going to ensure that they're empowered as opposed to being misused politically?
Well, one thing, we don't need to do anything to them. It's them who need to do something. And the only thing they need to do is to straighten their backs up. For far too long, young people in this country have been on bended backs and sitting on their laurels. And in fact, most of the time, whether it's through college or after college, relapsing into functional dormancy that does not steer this country forward. Now, a few things do happen, and we may take note of them. Well, it is always said, and fingers of accusation pointed to the young people, that why is it that they don't get into politics or political leadership? Secondly, why is it that most of the time they are deemed to be the rocks in the slings of politicians for purposes of political expediency? And I have brought myself to a quick and reserved conclusion that, one, it is easy to conclude that young people have been miseducated, misinformed, and some of them elect to thrive on that miseducation.
When you talk about miseducated, are you saying when there are still institutions of learning?
Nope, because there is the structured way of educating people through the system that they go through, some of them with distinction. At times they say flying colors, much as I've seen none flying. But the other thing is this: how is it that young people in this country fail to translate or to see how to fuse their classroom education with the off-classroom education or off-classroom learning? Because that is where one of the missing links is. The other thing is this, that politicians, having taken note of this, and also aware that because of we could call it the lack of resources and various capabilities among the young people, exploit it. And they forget, for instance, what Adam Smith tells us, that it's not from the benevolence of the butcher or the baker that we get our dinner, but out of their own desire for selfish gain. And the leaders, political leaders especially in this country, exploit young people in this country for their selfish gain.
But then if we know, Javas, and that's the question I think that I was raising earlier, that we know as Alternatives Africa, as Youth Agenda, as CMD, we know very well what politicians do to exploit the young people. The question is, what are we doing then to ensure that the youth are not exploited?
I will take that question. What Alternatives Africa is doing, in short, we call it Alternatives, is that Alternatives is a socio-economic development organization. We realize the place of profit. We realize the place of having a source of livelihood. And I'll give an example. One of the politicians went to one of the sub-counties in Nairobi for a political purpose. And one of the young people who has sat through our entrepreneurship and employability training told him that as we've been trained in business, we are business people, and if you want to assist us, assist our businesses to grow. Now that is a difficult person to pay 150 shillings, as I hear they are paid, to go and risk their life or their limb on your behalf. Now what happened is that that particular person knew me and they called me immediately. And when they called me, they didn't even tell me much. They gave that young person the phone. And what the young person told me in brief was, you people figure out how you can partner and help our businesses to grow. Now let me ask you, do you think that young man will close his business mtaani to come and riot here on a Monday? He will not.
He
Why?
will not close,
because
but for that
he has an investment.
Yes.
And therefore, many of the young people that you are seeing being used or misused is simply because, as I told you earlier, one, they get paid for it. It's not for free.
But
they are making money.
But because they also...
And I agree with her, and it all boils down to the question of chances and choices. And it would best be summed up by what J.F. Kennedy, former president of the U.S., termed as a lack of intellectual and moral strength. Because most of the time, on the part of the leaders, there is the lack of intellectual and moral strength. On the part of many young people as well, there is that lack of the moral and intellectual strength. And that is why the absence of that morality drives a politician to go and engage a bunch of young people, not for their own good and progress, but for his. And then look at it this way. For example, put into context, because you have to look at it textually, contextually as well, the issues of the IEBC demonstrations in Kenya, anti-IEBC rather. And while we know very well that disobedience, civil disobedience, demonstrations are not a new thing, and we know very well that by way of having their place in Article 37 of the Constitution, they are legally accepted. But how is it that we find young people who have been employed to step out of their abodes or houses, etc., businesses, to come and engage in demonstration or picketing, they start burning up other people's businesses, they start looting and beating up other people. That itself tells you too that the leaders who implored them to step out did not engage their minds on the purpose of this kind of engagement they're going to get to. Look at, for example, the civil rights movement in the United States of America under Martin Luther King Jr., or the kind of engagement, nonviolent engagement under Mahatma Gandhi. Those who had to engage in this had to be, values had to be inculcated in them so that they appreciate that we're not going here to cause violence or mayhem. We are going here for this purpose. That purpose is that which is missing.
But that purpose is because of the question of intellectual aspect that you are referring to. Mukwanja, are we right to compare, the times of Martin Luther King and the protesters there and the kind of the intellect they had with the Kenyan population? Because one will argue that we are not on the same scale.
I appreciate what my good friend Javas is talking about in entirety. But we must appreciate also the fact that we barely 60 years of self-rule. And the kind of countries he's actually mentioning have 200 years of really developing their democracy. I want to pick out a few issues. Hold on. I want to pick out a few issues so that I'm happy that, yes. I want to pick out a few issues. For instance, the issue of the morality and the intellectual part of it. It's correct, but we must also underscore the fact that amongst those young people, there have been those ones who've been keen on non-violent. And the media houses, including this one, have reported as much that we have seen young people within those protests, asking the others, and in fact going for the throats of the ones that are misbehaving. So there are elements, and I want to also agree with Waidara, that you don't need 5.9 million young people to act so that we can change. There is a percentage of young people that we must be able to, push on. And that is why I'm emphasizing, Martin, on one fact. The issues that are bedeviling this generation is not even a problem that was created by this generation. It's an emergency that has to be addressed by this particular generation, that the problem is we do not have the diagnosis of it. We are doing a prescription without a diagnosis. That's number two. We must appreciate the issue I'm talking about, structures. These young people get wayward after their classroom to off classroom because there are no structures beyond the formal system to prepare them for public space, to prepare them to make policies that offer solutions to the prevailing problems. And that is why, coming from the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, I am very passionate about one institution called the political party. You cannot have public leadership problems sorted out. You cannot have political problems sorted out unless you have functional political institutions.
But the question of function...
We do not have functional political institutions. We have ethnic groupings called TNA, called ODM, called Ford Kenya, and many others. What we need is to have functional political institutions that have safe spaces. Waidera just said she is coming from a background of student leadership. Waidera must appreciate that student leadership and public leadership have particular differences, and she must be mentored. Where are these mentors going to come from when the political institutions are dysfunctional?
Before I go back to Waidara, Javas, the question of what is raising that political systems that we have in this country seems to be dysfunctional. My view will be we seem to have functional political systems, but then which are advancing elitist kind of mentality, so that you want to say that you have appointed or nominated Martin as a member of parliament. But if I go deeper, I'm related to you as a party leader. Are we really advancing the interest of the young people in this country?
I have to aver that our political institutions are functional.
Yes.
But the function for which they are made is that which is different.
Yes.
That which is not progressive, but they are functional. Yeah. The issue is they're serving a certain function, that which is not for the general good. Now, thing is this.
The function of a political party is not being a vehicle to elect so and so to get to the house.
I agree.
Okay. What is the basis of electing that individual?
I think we are moving in the right direction. Today, fact that the exchequer is financing or funding political parties is one of those vital steps that, moving forward, the people, being sovereign, as Article 1 of the Constitution stipulates, need to start making demands of these political parties, so that these political parties don't serve the whims of their founders or the leaders. Because today, who unto you if you raise a finger to point to the direction of your political leader, chastising them for something, or appearing to have a well-thought-out idea that you do not gift your political leader to bring it out so that it can be seen it is out of his wisdom.
But are we anywhere closer? I see, Waidara, you seem to be something.
Yes.
But even as you say this, are we in a position, are we near anywhere close to what you can call maturity in terms of the way we play our politics?
Before we answer that question, first of all, let us agree that values and principles know no age. We cannot say that the U.S. behavior during their civil rights is simply because of the timing of when it happened. No. It is a matter of values and principles and set goals and disciplines according to how you will run your political parties and towards what end. So we cannot say that, oh, you people, we want you to go and demonstrate anti-IEBC, and after that, do whatever you want. After all, Kenya is only 40 years old. It is a matter of values and principles. It is a matter of you are trying to tell young people that it's okay You can be violent. It's okay as long as you're doing it on our behalf. Now, if you're doing that before you become a leader in government, when you become a leader, how will you go back and tell these same young people that now you need to follow the Constitution?
Time has come that it's important for us to pull our socks from around the anklets. Just a couple of hours ago, I think far less than 24, we've had a leader of the opposition saying that unless the leaders who are behind bars are released unconditionally, there are going to be unspecified consequences.
In fact,
Thing is this. Such leaders need to be brought to a point where they take note that even the constitution that governs us, the system under which we live as a people, provides for fair administrative action, provides for access to justice, etc. And you'll realize that even young people in such a coalition have not reason to disagree with their party leader. These are things that we need to, to part ways on.
But the question is, and that's the question, and I'll be coming back to you once we join Gordon Wycliffe, because the young people are agreeing with the politicians, but is it that Youth Agenda, CMD, Alternatives Africa, are we not doing enough to ensure that the young people agree with you? Why is it that? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it when we come back from the States. Gordon Wycliffe is standing by from the States, and I just went to ask Kenyans what their thoughts are about the whole subject of the young people in this country being marginalized and misused by by politicians. Let's have a look at what some of them had to say.
Well, it is a fact beyond reasonable doubt that the youth form a critical part of any society. Now, it is on this note that we are asking out here that are the Kenyan youth disengaged in political matters?
I do not believe, and I totally disagree, that the youths are being misused in political engagement in this country. What is happening in this country right now is that the youths have realized that it is their time. The youths have realized that in the past they've never been used, they've never been engaged in political activities. So they've realized that the government has not done their part by giving them 30% of the tenders of procurement that was promised. So that is why you see most of the young people are getting into politics. Most of the young people are going for the MCA positions, the parliamentary positions, just because they've realized that they can no longer wait. They can no longer wait for opportunity to come unless they come out and grab it.
Youth are somehow used as, you see, like the way when you go to war, you have shield. So basically I see them being used as shield because they're the people who are used to do the bad things. Again. And most of the time, let's say for example, a youth is uprising, they want to veer for any seat in politics. You find it's kind of very difficult because one, they see it like premature because ni msemo young ajui Kenya
ni kitu open, sio ati ni youth tu wako engaged because ni kila mtu ana demonstrate. So sioni kama ati ni youth wamefocus kwa youth kwa misuse in any way.
Basically, the youths are being misused in our country. For example, we see a situation whereby politicians, when they want to get political mileage, they have to use the youth to throw some stones. They're going to use the youth to stage some demonstrations. But you wonder, it looks like, for example, mature demonstration like the one which was led by Martin Luther. Martin Luther was there on the ground, working with everybody. But now in our situation, you see the politicians are just in their vehicles, but now the youths are just running all over, picking stones, throwing to everybody. So I think the youths are being misused, and I think time has come for the youth to realize that this country will be built by them. It will not be built by outsiders or foreigners, but it will be built by the youth. And time has come for a voice of reason to prevail in our country.
The Kenyan youth have been engaged indirectly. Why am I saying so? You get a number of politicians are using Kenyan youths to cause violence, to cause mayhem, and to cause disruptions where economic activities should have taken place.
On the issue of our role as the young people, I think it is important that the young people should be informed. We may have gone to school, we have studied different careers, but the basic aspects of even the constitution, the young people do not know their role, right, as the young people and their position in this country. So I think it is very important for the various organs of the government that is responsible for educating the public to inform the young people that, right, you are the majority, you are almost 70% of this population, you need to take part in election, you need to take part in even elective politics.
Well, Socrates once said that human beings are political animals through and through, and the youths are not excluded in any way. Well, the energy that they have can be channeled appropriately so that it can be positive in the society. Well, that's it from location here, Mwanje. Let me hand it back to you so that you can continue the program.
Thank you, Gori Wycliffe, for reminding me of Socrates. And I also dare say, Aristotle also says so. We are political and social. But mixed reactions there, Javas. Let me begin with you. And I like the observation that one of the speakers there made, that the youth have only realized that they have never been used. Now they're being used.
Well, Gori closed by citing Socrates.
Yes.
And if we're to link Socrates even by very thinking of Kant, by the allegory of the Copernican revolution, then we have to realize that time should come when we change the page, we turn the page. And unless we come to that point of realization, and this realization must not come from any other person, but the young people themselves. Look, we must not demand the least from the youth in this country. Is it not 32-year-old Thomas Jefferson who drafted the words of America's call to independence? Is it not words that still ring a bell 200 years on? A youth in his time. James Madison, a youth in his time. Abraham Lincoln, when he gave even one of his most moving institution at the Copper Institute, was he not 28 years old? So the thing is this, time has come where we must also start demanding the most from the younger people, even as we blame the older generation for exploiting their cluelessness. Because perhaps as I give room to the other guests,
yes.
Is it not Shakespeare through Cordelia who says that, are we not the first who with the best intent are incurring the worst? That's where we are at.
The kind of philosophy we have. But is it that Java's is so much, the benchmark you are using is so much higher than we are? But I don't know what to interact.
Let me bring it back home.
Yes, bring it back home.
For the sake of perhaps the young people who did not do philosophy.
Who did not do philosophy.
To simplify it, yes, and break it down. It's simply this. The nation we want shall not be given to us as young people. We have to create it ourselves. And if I give an example from right here at home, the people who fought for independence, the ones that actually shed their blood, I am sure they were not 60 years and above. They were young people. They were youth. They are the ones that fought for political liberation with the help of the older ones that were being arrested and others that were hiding and all sorts of things happening across the nation, not just in the Mau Mau forest, not just there. And what does that say? That if we were willing to fight for political liberation, even shed blood, why can we not accept to come together, reason together for socioeconomic liberation? Because all we want is development. That is why we have Vision 2030 blueprint. Today, if you ask a young person, we are of the same tribe, you cook 10 chapatis, do you give me 5? No. It doesn't matter. Not even the pan that cooks the chapati. Yes. However, we will come together from various tribes and form a group so that we can go to Youth Fund and get some money to do a project together. So this is what I believe we need as Kenyan youth.
Mukwanja,
we need to come together. We need to come together and rise up for development. And that process begins right from the electoral level, electoral participation.
Yes, I'm throwing the
there are various categories of youth in this country.
Yes.
Question is, if we were to have the instruments of power in the hands of the youth in this country, what will they do with it? Because we could be saying that the youth should be given, as it said, given. Now, suppose they are given on a platter. What will they do with it?
And a good question, because Mukwanja, there are those who argue. The thing is, no.
I'm saying it won't happen, but the thing is this.
Actually, it has.
What I'm saying, the point is this: the youth too are not preparing themselves for opportunity and take up.
In fact, I like
through opportunity revolution.
I like the way you're posing it, because Mukwanja, here the argument is, if you look at the political landscape, for example, for those leaders you want to perceive as youthful, the argument has been that let the young people down. So are we ready, even as the young people, to take over?
Listen, Martin, I'll take it from this perspective. The history of this country, as Javas has pointed out, elsewhere, is dotted with footprints of many young people that have made a difference. And at any particular time, you look at the likes of Mwai Kibaki, when they began their journey in public leadership, they weren't 70-year-old. They were literally out of campus life. Number two, look at the likes of Tom Mboya. When Tom Mboya was exporting Barack Obama Sr. to the US, this guy was in his mid-30s. So there is proof enough that young people can be able to rise to the occasion. Yes. But what sets us apart from those generations? Every generation must have a vision. The independence generation had a vision for self-rule. We have had a generation that has called itself the second liberation and indeed delivered the new dispensation that we have, the multi-party first and then the new dispensation in 2010 in terms of a new constitution that is quite good to move our country to the next level. What I need to say just to close, what is the vision of this generation? I want to state here clearly that we have problems of negative ethnicity. We have problems of, really making sure that thieves are the ones that are,
on positions of positions of leadership.
Thieves are praised.
That is not the vision.
I'm saying the issues.
Who crafts a generation's vision?
So the question is,
I'm saying the issues that needs to craft the vision. That is the issue of negative ethnicity. The issue of corruption in this country is a clear issue that we have to deal with. The issue of morality itself in this country
so from where
those issues can inform what this generation can craft as a vision to take this country to the next level.
Those are the challenges. Those are the challenges.
So the question
is, this generation must deliver socio-economic liberation for all of us.
So as it
stands, this nation must prosper.
You cannot deliver socio-economic liberation when you are not addressing those challenges.
You address challenges when you have a vision. When you have a vision, then you will identify what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses, what are your threats and what are your opportunities. This generation has to deliver socio-economic liberation. It has to deliver socio-economic development, because as long as people are hungry, there is no day you will have peace, even in a home.
So if I hear you rightly, Mukwanja, let me pause this.
Mukwanja had the patience to listen to the issues, then she would have gone to that issue. The issue of unemployment is a key issue that we must also address. All these issues that I'm raising are the ones that must make young people very uncomfortable.
In fact, as we cross over to Jane Bigambo, if I hear them well, the two of them, it's like young people in this country have no vision, as we speak now.
Yeah, very true, but you see, as I've said, nobody will grant that vision to this generation.
Yes.
Precisely.
This generation must rise to determine its own vision, its own focus, mission, and act on that purpose.
Precisely.
Vision is missing, mission is missing, purpose itself is absent.
But
that's why earlier I spoke to the issues of contextual. Today, appreciating modern capitalism in which we live, and the Constitution of Kenya 2010, that now is supposed to aid in social transformation that she's speaking to, then you realize that it's the young people themselves who must rise to determine how do we engage, and disengage when it's not serving us, determine our own vision, and start steering forward. For example, in the run-up to this 2010 Constitution, have we not had it said that we will not read that draft document because the leader has read it for us?
It was read for them.
When we throw ourselves into the pool of ignorance, then only ignorance shall be ours.
But do we have capacity as young people to define our destiny? That should be the question.
Let's educated countries.
The ingredients exist.
Jen, I want to believe that I have reactions to the other side. This is an interesting discussion.
You know, this is a much needed conversation on the role of the youth in our country at this point in time. And we asked you whether you think the youth are the most marginalized and misused group by the politicians. Some more feedback has come in. We have Mutua on SMS who says the youth are not actually involved in politics. They're just being used and manipulated. Again, echoing what Javas began by saying, do they really know what they're going to demonstrate about, or is it just merely for financial gain? All right, we'll move on to Gital, who says, it is time for us as the youth to stand up and speak out for ourselves and refuse to be used by politicians. Gital taking a firm stand there. And one more from Olivia on SMS. She says, the role of the youth in politics has merely been as thugs and noisemakers. We hardly see any mentoring or involvement of the youth in active and positive politics, bringing up the question of structure and support systems for the youth as they transition from active leadership in campus to in the society. Again, what Waithera was talking about. Our communication platforms are still open. Keep talking to us. Our SMS line is 20511. On Twitter, you can find us using @KBC Channel 1, hashtag Beyond the Headlines. And on Facebook, the page is Beyond the Headlines. Martin, back to you.
Thank you, Jen, and very interesting, by the way, responses from that discussion. And even as we bring this to an end now, I want to raise this question in Mukwanja, and Gitao raises a very fundamental question, that the youth should refuse to be used by politicians. But I'm just imagining, here I am, I'm at Mathare Slum or somewhere close to, say, Eastlands. I'm unemployed. A politician comes with 100 bob or 200 bob. What are the chances, or even 50 shillings, it doesn't matter. What are the chances that I'm going to refuse?
I think I want to flip it and answer this way. Ours is not our democracy, but a conspiracy and a confederation of fools because young people have chosen to be ignorant. The 100 shillings
you said
cannot,
a conspiration and a confederation of fools.
A conspiracy and a confederation of fools because young people have chosen to be ignorant.
Yes, justify.
Young people have chosen to be ignorant. If you look at the simple arithmetics, 100 shillings cannot be able to deal with the issues that you are confronted with. Only the right decision in terms of which leader is going to give us the solutions in terms of sitting down and engaging and separating wheat from chaff and saying Javas stands for this and Waithera's opinion about unemployment is this. I think Waithera has a better plan in terms of getting more young people in between jobs than Javas, and therefore I'll vote for Waithera. And I will not, out of that, I will not pick Javas' 100 shillings to make that decision. The mere fact that you're convinced to take their 100 shillings qualifies me to call you a fool, and therefore making ours not a democracy, but a confederation
of such a youth. Please, I will not, I will beg to differ there. I will not call such a youth, I would not call such a youth a fool. Because there's a word that goes on mtaani, and it comes from a Kikuyu word, it's called kurarira. Kurarira means that you slept hungry. Okay, now if I sleep hungry and somebody comes and tells me, go and make noise.
And I'll give you 150.
And I'll give you 150. Trust me, with 150, I can eat. I can eat in the low-income settlements. Yes. I can eat for at least 3 days.
In fact,
right now I'm thinking,
let's make a calculation.
Let me tell you, allow me to finish. Allow me to finish. Right now, I am on survival mode. I am not thinking about 1 week. I am not thinking of my future. What future is there if I will die or drop dead in the next 24 hours? So right now, what we need to think of is how can we include the youth in all the decision-making processes, political, social, and economic, while ensuring that their present challenges are being addressed. And we as alternatives are figuring out that, and we are just waiting to partner with one of the organizations to see how we can do something and start a campaign towards that. Absolutely. But we are very aware that there is no way you can expect someone to think in terms of the future when right now they are watching their sister or their mother or even a friend dying because they cannot afford 300 shillings for medical clinic.
I like what Waithera says, and as we bring this to an end, by the way, Javas, I want to finish with you, and maybe I can just try and put things into perspective for Mukwanja as we bring this to an end, by the way, and we have about 40 seconds. Mukwanja, 100 bob in Kenya can buy milk, 45 shillings.
For how often are you getting that? For
how often are you getting that?
Are we being economy?
There's a Kadogo economy, by the way.
The question is,
Javas,
if we want to be business, how long, how often do we get
the question
that?
is how long, and
How
that's what we
often
talk
do we get
about.
it?
But the Javas, is Mukwanja becoming too idealistic and not realistic based on the Kenyan
Youth
context?
agenda believes that the youth must rise to set their own agenda. And that own agenda also means that you must look at where you are today and how you can move to where you want to go. The fundamental question is, how do we move from here? And that means that engaging with all the networks that exist, mentorship opportunities, and the issues that Alternatives is speaking to, the issue of political awareness that CMD is working toward, and more than that, the young people also themselves realizing that it's time enough to wipe off the scales from their faces and start engaging afresh, anew, with purpose, with vision, and determination.
And you can finish the show by throwing a philosophical quote. Just the last one as we bring this to an end. Do you want to quote Thomas Jefferson, or is it, I don't know, whether it's Aristotle or whoever, you're free to.
But you see...
Throw in a quote, Javas.
Well, we may quote them. They lived among us. They're long dead now.
Yes.
I think the greatest challenge is that we live our lives today such that we will also be quoted during such times. And that is the challenge to the young people. Turn a page every day. People in this country are not reading. Read, work hard, pray hard, and actually it will work for all of us.
So as things stand, if you want to hide anything from a Kenyan,
Put it in a book.
Put it in a book. Thank you, Frank Mukwanja.
It's not convince us that the 100 shillings is a solution. How often
It's
does
not
the
a
100
solution.
come?
It's not.
Young people must refuse to sell their vote, period.
Waithera did not say that 100 bob is a solution.
Thank you for
In
speaking
fact,
on my behalf.
she just put that into context so that we come to understand. But thank you very much, Frank
May
Mukwanja.
I say something as we
Waithera.
conclude?
Yes.
With regard to politics, a wise person said that a politician just thinks of the next elections, but a statesman thinks of the next generation. This is the generation that the politicians should be thinking about as they pass on the baton. But we too, as this generation, as I said, must rise up and realize it shall not be given to us on a silver platter. We have to take it and create it, not just for us, but for the next generation.
Frank Mukwanja, thank you very much for that guide and Javas Bikambe. It's always a pleasure to have you join us. I want to assure you we have to replay this and maybe just invite you for another discussion. What an interesting discussion it has been. And it's on that at that point that we bring Beyond the Headlines to an end this evening. Thank you very much for getting time to join us. And this is a discussion we're going to continue with. Of course, next Sunday, we'll be handling another topic, of course. Thank you very much. On behalf of the entire production and technical crew that made this production a success, my name is Martin Mwanja, but you can keep the conversation as Jen Wamboy will let us know in a short while. Jen, I want to believe that's the spirit.
Yes, Martin, this has indeed been quite the hot conversation, and it does not need to end here. So keep talking to us. Remember, we asked you whether the youth are the most marginalized and misused group by the politicians. Our SMS line is still open. 20511 is the number. You can also find us on Twitter. Our handle is at KBC Channel 1, hashtag Beyond the Headlines. And on Facebook, our page is Beyond the Headlines. Alternatively, you can always send us an email. Our address is bth@kbc.co.ke. My name is Jen Wamboy. Many thanks for coming in Beyond the Headlines. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing.